Hey there guys, so today's video is going to be my favorite video that I get to film in the beginning of each month, and that is going to be my April reading wrap-up. I read a total of 14 books this month, a little bit less than last month, but still it's 14 books. My goal was 15 books because I thought, since I, achieved that last month, I thought I could keep that same goal up. But then I realized, as the month went on, I was still keeping to my schedule of the books that I was reading and how long I was reading the books for. I didn't spend longer than 2 to 3 days reading each book. And my goal each week was to read 3 books a week. So that would only have resulted in reading 12 books in total. But I think that was met because I read 3 books a week pretty much. But I also finished one book, the first book of the month, April 1st, which is what I did last month with Powerless. I finished that March 1st. And usually I'll finish, but actually this month I'm starting a new book today. I finished the last book that I wanted to read to meet my 14 book goal last night. So I'm actually starting off the month fresh reading a new book. I'm not finishing a book today. I might because the book isn't that long. But I have to be less harsh on myself on whether or not I do meet my reading goal. And if I read 14 books, that's still amazing. It's still more books that I've ever read. It's still more books that I've ever read in 1 year. And actually the book that I am on right now will be my 50th book this year. 50 books. That is insane to me. Because I only ended up reading 15 books last year because I didn't start reading obsessively until November, December. And then this year I've almost read 50 books. So I'm very, very, very proud of myself. So let's start off with the first book that I read this month, and that is Lynn Painter's The Do-Over. I really like starting the month with something light or something that I'm, again, finishing, or something like this that doesn't take too long to get through. And also I decided to read this at the end of March because, again, it's not a long book. I was hoping to finish this in 1 day, but I think I ended up working. I don't even remember what the certain scenario was. But this is now my second Lynn Painter book that I have read, and I rated this a 4.25 stars. And let's get into why I liked it. I mean, I already really loved Better Than the Movies, so I knew, and I was really in the mood for another romance at this point. I don't think I had really read much romance since I had read Better Than the Movies, because then I went on a huge fantasy kick in March and I read 12 fantasy books. Oh, before I get into all the books, I just wanted to say I read 3 romance books. I read 4 mystery adventure books. I read 2 mystery thriller YAs. I read 4 fantasy books. Actually, I think I read 5. I read 5 fantasy books. So it's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yeah. I think that's it, right? And 4 mystery adventure. So I kind of broadened my genres a bit more this month, and I wanted to read things that I've either wanted to get back to the genre or a genre that I've never read before, which is actually mystery adventure. So The Do-Over is about, let me just make sure I get the names of the characters right. A girl named Emily Hornby, and she is in love with this guy at school. She's actually dating this guy at school. I was about to get it confused with the plot of Better Than the Movies. And I'm like, no, they're two separate books. I'm just going to leave it in front of me instead of putting it down. And basically, she is dating this guy. And basically, it's the day before Valentine's Day, and she's like getting all giddy and excited for Valentine's Day because she got him a really nice gift. And, you know, this is her very first Valentine's Day with a Valentine because she's in high school. This is like her first real boyfriend and real relationship. So she's super excited for Valentine's Day. Well, she gets into a car accident before she gets to school on Valentine's Day, and she just so happens to crash into her lab partner's car, and his name is Nick, and she keeps on running into him in all different kinds of ways. So this happens, and she's late to school, but she ends up being able to see her boyfriend, and, you know, the events play out of the day of them exchanging gifts for each other. Well, actually, she never got to give him his gift because she saw him in the parking lot, like, in between class, having this other girl in his car, and they were going to go to Starbucks together to get coffee. And she actually saw him kiss her, but he's claiming that she kissed him. And she gets really upset and, you know, goes home and cries and is, like, heartbroken. And she doesn't want to be with him anymore. And it basically, like, ruins her whole Valentine's Day. And then the next day when she wakes up, she does Valentine's Day all over again. It's kind of like a Groundhog's Day scenario, all except it's Valentine's Day. And she keeps on trying to get out of this time loop that she's now stuck in. And I just thought it was really cute. That's basically the gist of the book. I'm not going to give too much away because, again, if you want to read it yourself, I just wanted to give you a brief synopsis. Just the thing with Lynn Painter books that don't really quite make them 5-star for me. I mean, I still have a great time reading them. They're really fast, quick reads that you can read if, like, you're in a reading slump and you need something quick and easy, or if you just want an easy romance to read. You don't have to be worried about being too emotionally invested in the story, but the way that she sets scenes and her comedy is hysterical. But there's always, like, something about one of the main characters that is kind of shitty that they do to the other person or they do to the other people in the story that kind of turns me off a little bit from the character. That doesn't make it quite a perfect romance for me, but that doesn't mean I don't enjoy these books. And Gus has a very rough Valentine's Day every year because he actually lost his little brother on Valentine's Day, and he's the one that she keeps on running into, her lab partner, and they end up falling for each other because obviously, like, that's why she keeps on doing Valentine's Day over and over again. And eventually she does break it, and the way that she breaks it is really funny. And the way that they make up at the end is actually really sweet too. I actually liked it. I liked the male that she was in love with in Better Than the Movies more so than Gus in this. No, not Gus, Nick. Oh my god, I'm calling him Gus because Gus is the character's name in Beach Read. And I just finished Beach Read yesterday. But I really enjoyed this. Really, really cute. Let's move on. But it was a very cute YA romance. And if you want a good, easy, fun book, Lynn Painter is always a good choice for me. And I do recommend her books. Okay, so next up, this was a fantasy duology that was actually on my... I can't believe I've already been talking for 10 minutes. I've only talked about one book. So I'm trying to, like, pick this up already. But the next duology that I read, and I ended up reading it the first week of April so I could read this because I was so excited to read it, was the One Dark Window duology by Rachel Gillig. The first book is called One Dark Window, and the second book is called Two Twisted Crowns. These, again, weren't quite 5-star for me, but they were still a really great time. I had a lot of fun reading these. They were really fun and exciting, a little dark, and they were just really, really well written. So I gave, again, both of these a 4.5 stars. They weren't quite 5-star for me, but that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy these. So basically, we have the main character, Elspeth Spindle. And basically, this takes place where there's like this deck of cards, of magic cards, that were created by this man or beast called the Shepherd King, like back like a long time ago. And whoever touches these cards, and if the card like chooses you, you get infected with magic. And I thought that was just such a cool concept, that basically this concept in this book was kind of the total opposite of Powerless, because in Powerless, they kill people that don't have magic, and people with magic think that people without magic are going to infect the people with magic in Powerless and cause them to die, or like die from disease. But in this book, basically it's the other way around, where the mortals are trying to be, or the regular non-magic folk are trying to be protected by or trying to be protected from the people with magic. And actually, if people discover that you have magic, you will be executed. So that was, a very dark concept. And basically, she gets infected with the Shepherd King's card. And most of the book is like her internal dialogue with the Shepherd King, and the fact that he is a monster. And whoever is infected with these cards, the cards take a physical and mental toll on the human that they infect. So her mental and physical toll is that the Shepherd King will eventually overtake her body, and she will become the monster that he is. And Elspeth will be pretty much lost forever. So it's pretty dark. It was still extremely well written. I really enjoyed the first one, but that's all I'm probably going to give you for about the first book. She also has a family, and, they know her secret. But also, like, the king, it's, again, very similar to the way that Powerless was written, was that basically he wants to kill all the people that are infected with magic. But also, he uses magic to benefit himself, because one of his sons is infected with magic, and so is his other son, and it's taking tolls on both of them as well. Like, one of the sons is actually a mind reader, but he is getting extremely sick by his ability, and it is physically deteriorating him. And basically what they have to achieve is they have to destroy the cards in order to break these curses, basically, that are set upon these people that are infected with magic. So that's basically what the whole first book is about. And then the second book is basically where she is overtaken by the monster, by the Shepherd King. But also, like, their banter between each other is actually really, really funny at some parts. And I did really enjoy the characters. I felt like I was kind of reading Cruel Prince again, where the characters really assist to the storytelling rather than falling really in love with the characters themselves. But I found that Cruel Prince was just a little bit better for me. And I think because I had more of a chance to fall in love with those characters. But again, it's not like these books were bad. They were still great. And basically this book is also about her love story between the king's general, I think he is, and I believe his name is Raven, right? I think his name is Raven. And then the other, it actually takes place on three different POVs in this book. And because the first book mostly took place all from Elspeth's point of view, but this book takes place between Elspeth, Raven's, and Elm's point of view. And Elm is actually another one of the king's sons that actually is not infected with magic. But he's always like seeking the king's approval and all of that. And I actually really fell in love with Elm's love story because he actually falls in love with this other woman that is infected with magic, and she is infected with this magic called the Maiden, where basically she can't be wounded. She can heal herself, and basically also I don't think she can age either. So she has like these amazing healing abilities. And basically she's like a doll, and like what's overtaking her and her magical toll and physical toll on her is that she's becoming less and less like herself and is basically losing herself to this power. So she doesn't really feel much emotion anymore because she's basically becoming like a hollow doll. But Elm ends up falling in love with her, and I really enjoyed their love story. I still really loved Raven and Elspeth's story as well. But I really loved the way that she told her story, but also this is, mostly about Elspeth struggling to become herself again because the Shepherd King takes over her. And now basically the rest of the book is about them breaking the curse of the tarot cards. And also, since these have not been broken yet, it creates like this mist in the woods in the forest, and that's why there's such a heavy fog on both of these covers, because basically if you run into this fog, it will make you go insane, and you will eventually be pretty much mentally tortured to death. It's like actually like an awful way to die. But eventually they do break the curse, which you kind of can guess, because it's like if they didn't, then like this wouldn't have really been wrapped up, and she would stay like a monster forever, which obviously she wasn't going to. But I just thought it was very well written. It was really fun, and I really enjoyed my time reading it. So really liked that. Okay, and then but that's basically the gist of both of these books. Again, I'm not going to go like too much into detail. You can, if it sounds like something you want to read, then I would recommend any of these books, because honestly, I didn't really read a bad book this month, but also like I didn't read too many books that I fell in love with this month. So the next book I ended up reading was my very first Emily Henry book, and this one is called Book Lovers. I gave this book a 4.25 again, and I will explain why I gave this book a 4.25, and again why it wasn't quite 5-star for me. So the two main characters' names are Nora and Charlie, and Nora is and I kind of drifted off a little bit from my TBR at this point because I actually still have the Encyclopedia of Fairies and Map of the Other Lands on my TBR, and I actually was going to get to them the last week of April, but then Emily Henry kind of took over because I had never read any Emily Henry books before, and I really, really, really wanted to. So, but I wasn't going to read her books until like more so in the summertime, because most of her books do take place in like the summer. And since, the beginning of April is still kind of cold, I'm kind of like a bit of a mood reader, and I wanted to wait until it got a bit warmer out before I decided to read her books. But I was like, you know what? Let me start out with this one. I really, really want to read her books. So, and I was not disappointed. It was a really fun, really good story, but I didn't love it as much as Beach Read. And I will talk about Beach Read later because it was actually the last book that I read. Like I said, I just finished it last night in April. So Nora is actually a book agent, and Charlie is a book editor. And they basically have to work together to publish this book that they are trying to get published. And he doesn't really love this book. He actually kind of hates it, but she really loves it. And she's trying to, get him to market it and edit it for her. And he's like, I kind of hate it. It's not really that great. Like, blah, blah, blah. So Nora never really goes away on trips for herself. She never really does much for herself at all because she basically has like her sister, and I forget her sister's name. I think it's Libby. Yeah, Libby. And Libby is basically her best friend. They have lived in New York like their whole lives. And Libby actually offers to take Nora on a trip to, I believe it was North Carolina or South Carolina, and she says, I want to take you here for a little getaway, and we're going to rent an Airbnb, and we're going to stay there. So they go on this trip, and guess who just so happens to be staying in the town at the same time? Charlie. And she runs into him at, I believe, it's always a coffee shop or like a bookstore. It's so funny how much these people love books in the books that you're reading. Because obviously, authors love books in order to write one. But it's just funny how, how often books are actually mentioned in the books that I read. I just think it's funny. So they basically coincidentally meet each other because he's not there because of her. He's there because he just so happened to be from North Carolina, and he grew up there and his parents lived there. And he actually came there to catch a flight to help his parents out because his dad unfortunately just suffered a stroke. So he goes there to help out his dad. And basically the whole rest of the book is, her encounters with him and whether or not they are going to fall in love. And, the sister is constantly hiding something from her, though. And Nora actually thinks it's much darker than it actually is. But it turns out that the reason why that Libby wanted to bring Nora along on this trip is because she wanted to see if she fell in love with this place, because Libby eventually wants to move here, and she does reveal that to her. I just want to finish talking about this book, and then I'll clean up my under eyes, and then we'll talk about more books. I'm actually getting really hungry already because I didn't really eat that much today. But I need to get out of the house in like a half hour, or I'm never going to. But I'm only going to like 2 places, and then I'll go home and eat something. Or I might just eat before I leave because, again, I'm not going to be out that long today. So they end up falling in love with each other. But this book is a lot more buildup of when they're actually going to kiss than in Beach Read. They don't kiss until like 300 pages in. And I believe that this book is a bit longer than Beach Read. It's actually only like 20, not even 20 pages longer. But I just found it was hysterical. It was really good. I really loved Charlie. I think I loved Charlie even more than Gus in Beach Read. But it was getting a little bit annoying with the slow burn at this point because it's like you want them to kiss finally, but it's like how much buildup is there going to be? And let me just wipe my under eyes. It's driving me nuts. Hold on. So basically that's what happens in this book. I still really, really enjoyed it. And it was cute, but it wasn't as good as Beach Read. So really liked it. If you want to read it, go ahead. I still highly recommend it. I just wasn't as in love as I thought I was going to be. Okay, so then let me just prime really quick. I'm using the Rare Beauty one, of course, and I'm using the Beauty and the Beast palette because I've been using it for like the past 4 days now, and I really am enjoying this collection from ColourPop. It's really nice, so well, that's mostly what I'm going to be using. Let me just see if my video uploaded. Yes, it did. So now I can get rid of this one while I'm filming because I need to clear some more room in my computer. Okay, there we go. But it was cute. I liked it. But I'm not going to say anything else because it's going to spoil too much. Okay, then the next books I decided to read was I really wanted to finish the Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy, so I read the second and third book in the month of April. I read the first book back in, I think it was February. No, it was the beginning of March. Like, I think it was like the 5th or 6th book that I read, and then I decided to finish the trilogy. I gave this book a 4.25, and I gave As Good as Dead a 5-star. This was actually my first 5-star of the month, and my only 5-star until later in the month. So Good Girl, Bad Blood, again, pretty much picks up exactly where the first book left off. I still really enjoyed this one. I enjoyed this trilogy so much. I think it's worth all of the hype. It really is very well written, and you basically feel like you are solving these cases with Pip. So Pip is the main character, and she has to work with this other kid that she is actually friends with in her school. And basically, her friend's older brother goes missing. He ends up being kidnapped. Well, not kidnapped. He ends up just going missing. But the way it's revealed is so fucking cool, and it ends up being very connected to the first book, why these crimes are being committed. And it's just so cool to figure out with Pip. And basically most of the book is that she is working with his younger brother to find his older brother. And, you know, she investigates like his Facebook. They're trying to get into his computer to figure out like where he could have possibly disappeared to. And they end up finding like these videos on Facebook. And they also end up finding Snapchat stories on videos on where he was the night before he went missing. And they also find out that he has actually been talking to this girl online that is actually someone in their school. And he goes to this party that night to try and meet her because he knows that she goes to the same school as Pip and his brother. And he confronts her at this party, and she says, "I don't know who you are. Why are you, asking me if I've talked to you before and all this stuff? And she just notices that he's acting very odd. And it turns out that he actually has been catfished this whole time from someone that is pretending to be her online. And basically the rest of the book is finding out who this catfish is and why his brother was taken. And it was just really well written. She didn't really work with, why can't I remember his name right now? Her boyfriend, the first guy that she worked, Ravi. Ravi was, the brother of the guy that got murdered in the first book. And then they worked together to solve that murder. But I enjoyed this just as much as the first book. I still really enjoyed the thrillery aspect. I think that this one was a bit more mystery than exactly thriller. But I still really liked it. And I do think that this trilogy is just really well written. So I really liked it. And eventually they do solve the kidnapping of the older brother. And they find out multiple things, and it's just really, really good. I'm not going to spoil anything else. I just really enjoyed it. Okay, and then the next book that I read was the third book in the trilogy, which is As Good as Dead. And I gave this book a 5 stars. But this is a very conflicting 5-star read for me. Because the first part of the book was excellent. Very well written. It basically was the same, writing style and type of story that I was used to with this series. But the second part of the book took quite a different turn that I was not expecting at all. And I really thoroughly enjoyed it. And I shed some tears at the end. But it was, wow, wild. The second part of this book is wild. So, basically, in this book, Pip is actually being contacted by anonymous people online because she is now getting pretty famous with her Good Girls Guide to Murder podcast. And, a lot more people know who she is. And she is now pretty much getting harassed on a daily basis on like Reddit, on 4chan, on whatever, on Facebook. And she keeps on getting these anonymous messages from this man that keeps on threatening her and is like warning her to stop trying to uncover this mystery of who this serial killer is. And she ends up making the connection that he is the one that is leaving her all of these very alarming things on her driveway, on her street, on her brick wall outside her garage. And it's basically like a dead crow, or like these chalk marks of stick figures of basically, and it's always like a different number of stick figures every single time. So it does have a pattern. And she tries to go to police to tell them that she thinks that she is being stalked, but she doesn't really have any real proof because every time she finds the chalk marks, sometimes they are already washed away from the rain. But eventually she does get the proof that she needs, but she thinks that the cops are not going to help her because, since she has a history with the cops, even though she's the one that solved the murder in the first case. And also she takes on the kidnapping in the second case, in the second book, because the police don't want to, which is what the police actually do, is that they won't investigate high priority missing people. They think because this was normal behavior for the parent's son that went missing, because he would sometimes go disappear for like days at a time and not tell anyone where he went. But his younger brother is the only one that thinks that something is actually seriously wrong, and so does their mother. But the dad doesn't think that this is abnormal behavior for him. He doesn't really... He actually gets angry with the wife and tells her, like, this is ridiculous. How do you think that he is actually missing? Like, this is normal behavior for him, blah, blah, blah. And in the third book, she eventually finds out who the person is that is harassing her and basically stalking her, has the same pattern as this notorious serial killer back like 20 years ago. And this other man was actually put away for these killings. And it's just so crazy. Like, there's so much information, so I'm not going to, like, really say too much more because there's a lot more that I might not be totally accurate on because I'm trying to remember everything. But he is basically wrongfully put away for these murders. Like, he's not the one that actually did it. He was actually wrongfully harassed in his interview for a confession, which is actually, like, illegal from police, but it happens a lot more than you actually think. Basically, it was a forced confession because the detective basically confused him on purpose because he wasn't exactly a person with a high intelligence, and that's usually who the police or detectives take advantage of for these confessions. So that's what happens in the first part of the book, and then the second half of the book I'm not even going to really talk about. But basically, I thought it was going to take this turn where it was going to be about, like, the whole trial of this character and why they committed this murder. But it ended up being totally different, and they actually form a plan to get out of this murder, like not being caught. But then eventually the guilt gets to them and they want to confess. And there's like this heartbreaking scene between these two characters where basically they say that they want to confess to the police and the other person says, no, I don't want you to do this. And it is really sad. But, like, when I was finished with it, I did not expect it to go that way at all. Oh, and also, Pip ends up being or becoming a victim, or almost becoming a victim of this serial killer that she's trying to catch. And that part actually really scared the crap out of me because it was so realistic. Basically, this serial killer would bind you in masking tape and leave you in a room and then come back and kill you. Like, completely with tape and just mask your whole face, your nose, everything, so you could, like, barely breathe. So it's basically some form of torture at first. And then it's just so scary that you don't think that she's going to escape, but she's Pip. Like, she has to escape eventually. And then things take such a dark turn after that. And it is crazy. And that's what the whole second part of the book is about. So it was still really, really good. I still really enjoyed it. I still think about these books because I thought they were just so well written. And they were just really good. Okay. So then I jumped into another series after I finished the Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy, and I finally read all 4 of the Inheritance Games books. And I can't really hold all of these up at the same time. So the first 2 books are the Inheritance Games and the Hawthorne Legacy. And then we have the Final Gambit. And then the last book that is out right now is the Brothers Hawthorne. I wanted to read these for a long time, for like a couple months, because actually the fifth and final book is coming out in November, and actually there is a spin-off series that is coming out, I believe, like summer or fall. So now, since I have read the first 4 books, I'm all caught up. And I gave all of these books a 4.5 out of 5 stars. None of these were quite 5-star for me, but I will say, if you're in a reading slump, I think that these are a really good way of getting out of one. They're just fun, they're fast-paced, they're easy to get through, they're not too emotionally investing. It does cover a lot of sad topics, though. But I'm just going to talk all about these in general. I'm not going to hold them up again because I already did. Just so you know, all of them were 4.5 for me. But I do think this series as a whole is a 5-star because I still think about it. I still think it was really fun. And you end up getting through these books so fast because they're just so easy to read. So, and I just think that Jennifer Lynn Barnes is so good at that, that I just really enjoyed it and I just really had a great time reading them. So basically, it's just such a cool concept. I think the only reason why I gave these books a little bit lower than a 5-star is that I wanted there to be more games. I wanted there to be more mystery. Sometimes it got a little bit too serious, but at the same time, it was so well written, those parts, but you like kind of wanted to get back to like the mystery and the adventure. So the main character's name is Avery Grams, and she is not a very well-off person, and she ends up being the sole inheritor of this man, Tobias Hawthorne's, like, billions of dollars fortune after he dies. And basically, in the will, the officiator of the will tells her that you're the one that inherited all this money. But he also has 4 grandsons, and they're all known as the brothers Hawthorne. And they are always trying to impress their grandfather and always are trying to, keep his legacy alive. And that's like what the whole second book is pretty much about. That's why it's called the Hawthorne Legacy. But also, he would have them perform like these series of challenges and games for the grandfather, like all 4 of the Hawthorne brothers. But also, like, Avery has never spent any time with the Hawthorne brothers. She doesn't even know, like, who Tobias Hawthorne really is. She was never really close with him. And then things start unfolding so much as to why he left her his fortune. Because it's like, why is it that he didn't leave his fortune to one of his grandsons? Because actually the brother Grayson was the one that he thought that his grandfather chose to be his heir, and he thought he was going to inherit the money. So each book is like a series of challenges that they have to figure out, because even after the grandfather passed away, he still has these challenges in place for the brothers and for Avery to figure out, and for her to figure out why the fuck he left her all this money. So, the first book is mostly about that, and you find out a bit more as to why she inherited this money, but you don't really find out the true reason until, like, almost the 3rd book. But she does give you quite a lot at the end of the first one as to why she inherited this money. And also, since she inherited all this money, she is a public figure now. Billionaires always get, attention in the press, and she's like, I've never had this in my life before. So she has to have security, she has to have a lawyer, she has to have a press secretary, she has to have everyone handling every aspect of her life pretty much now. And she knows that her life is like never going to be the same again. But also all this money, changed her life because she was never well off in the first place. And then the second book, you find out more and more as to why she inherited this money and who she is actually related to in the Hawthorne family. And she thinks that this other, son of Tobias Hawthorne is actually her father, and then it turns out they don't have any blood relation to each other. And then the third book is where he actually had run away from her and like disappeared from her. And then in the third book, they actually have to save him from being kidnapped from this other man that's like a Riddler and like a actually somebody that Tobias Hawthorne fucked over while he was alive and like took all of his money. So that's what the third book was about. And also there's a lot of like really sad details that you find out about why Tobias Hawthorne picked Avery Grams. And also during this whole time, she has had a huge target on her back because people know if they kill her, they are going to inherit her money because there are like certain rules that you have to follow in order to inherit money. Like she also, I think she had to wait until she was turned 18 in order to, have the money, because that's when she becomes a legal adult. And throughout the series, people try to kill her and threaten her to hurt her. So it's like really sad, some of the things that happen. But again, it's just so well paced. And then this fourth book is basically about the four brothers, and it takes place between Jameson and Grayson's perspective. And Jameson is basically involved in like this casino game with Avery, and Grayson is actually trying to find more things about his real father, because again, throughout the series, the four brothers try to find out who their parents are, but they actually know who the mother is, and the mother has never really been there for them. And again, like the grandfather was the one that pretty much raised them, and the mother has done quite a bit of things to fuck over the sons as well. And I think she shares a couple of the sons with other husbands. Like she's the mother of them, but they all have like different husbands. I think that's why they are brothers, because they're all like technically stepbrothers, because they all share one parent. I think that's what it is. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure. And in the fourth book, Jameson is involved in this game with Avery, and they have to play this in order to like save themselves. But like I felt that the fourth book was not as suspenseful as the first three books were, with everything that went on in the story. But I still really enjoyed it, and I do think it was a necessary story to tell. And some people don't really enjoy the fourth book, but I still really liked it. It is the longest book in this series, and it's actually the longest book that I read this month. I actually didn't read any books this month that were over 500 pages. I actually read, every book that I read was under 500 pages. And this book was like 469 pages. But it still was very easy to get through. I just felt like, oh my god, it's long. But I wasn't really bored. The only time I was a little bit bored was when, like, they would go back to Grayson, when I would want to find out, like, what happens in the games with Jameson and Avery. It's like, okay, let's go back to Grayson. But I liked those switching perspectives, and also she switched chapters sometimes where she was saying and talking about flashbacks with the grandfather and the brothers playing the games when they were growing up. So I just thought it was really well written, and I really liked it. And basically this book and the Final Gambit set up the Grandest Game, which is coming out in September. And I'm not going to spoil what the Grandest Game is because you're just going to have to read the books. But they were really, really fun. I had a great time. So let me just grab the other 4 books. Okay, so after I finished the Inheritance Games, I really wanted to get back to reading some fantasy because I was missing it. And I didn't want to overkill myself with fantasy this month because I didn't want to not be in love with fantasy anymore. Like, it's still my favorite genre, but I felt like I was getting a little bit of burnout after reading so much fantasy in March. So the next book that I read is called Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli. And this was the only other book besides Beach Read that I drifted from my TBR because I actually had picked this up recently from Barnes & Noble. And I just really wanted to read it because I heard it was really good. And this was actually my least favorite book that I read this month. I gave it a 3.75 stars, which is actually like the lowest rating that I've given a book since Bride. I have not rated a book 3 stars since I rated Bride 2 stars. This is actually my first 3-star book of the year. And this is the first book in the Crimson Moth duology. I'm not sure when the second one comes out, but this cover is so gorgeous that, I don't know, I just wasn't really vibing with it that much. I found that I was kind of bored at a lot of times in this book, and I just wanted it to be over. Like, I just found myself not really caring about the characters all that much. So basically, it's about a witch, and her name is, I already forgot her name, Rune, and the witch hunter's name is Gideon, and basically it's about Gideon, killing witches, which is, a common theme about witches in books because obviously, humans wanted to kill witches back in the day. So, but you think, and so does Gideon, that Rune is the Crimson Moth, and basically the Crimson Moth leaves marks of a moth at every murder scene that she commits. So she ends up committing these brutal murders, but also you never really know if she is the one that did this because she acts like a very naive witch. And honestly, she kind of acts similar to Amelia in Kingdom of the Wicked. But I ended up enjoying Kingdom of the Wicked so much more than this story because I just didn't really care about the characters. It was not as much, magic as I was hoping it to be. And I'm not saying the whole thing about the period blood, grossed me out because apparently they're supposed to use some type of blood in order to cast spells and, magical spells and stuff. But I just found that I just didn't really care. So Gideon, does these things to try and romance her so he can get closer to her. Because basically, 75 pages into the book, he already figures out that she's the Crimson Moth. She's not exactly very careful about the way that she goes about things, which actually kind of really annoyed me. I'm like, why is she making these stupid-ass decisions and these careless mistakes? If she's the Crimson Moth and she's a witch, wouldn't you think she would be way more careful than she actually is? And that actually really pissed me off because it's again, if you're a witch, Wouldn't you think you would know, like, how to survive at this point? Yes, of course, like, humans are not perfect. But the thing is that this is what annoys me about some female protagonists, and I've said this about Kingdom of the Wicked, is that I don't like when they write the female characters kind of stupidly. Because they don't do that to the males in stories. So it's like, why is it that the female's the only one that makes these stupid decisions and not the male? Like, wouldn't you think, again, she would be more careful because she knows that Gideon wants to kill her? So, like, I basically had figured out, who was the one that was behind all of the murders and the one that, betrayed her pretty much like way before it actually happened. And then as the action happened, towards the end of the book, it was just like such predictable formulaic action for me that I just was just like, okay, whatever. Like, I mean, I'm still going to read the second book. I am excited for the second one, and I think that the second one is probably going to be better than the first one. But I thought that the action at the end of Two Twisted Crowns and the end of the next book that I'm going to talk about was way better. Like, the action at the end of Two Twisted Crowns had me hooked. It was so well written and just so fucking good. I don't know if it's just because, like, this book is a standalone. I don't know, but so yeah, it was okay. I didn't really fall in love with it as much as I thought I was going to. Okay, and then the next two books that sorry. Hold on. I'm really tired. I didn't really get that much sleep last night. Okay, so then I finally read this duology. I've been dying to read it like all month, but then I finally decided to. I just wanted to read Heartless Hunter first because it was a little bit longer than these two books. But I finally read the Stolen Heir duology by Holly Black. So the first one is Stolen Heir, and the second one is The Prisoner's Throne. And basically, these two books are about Ren and Oak. And Oak is, if you've read the Cruel Prince trilogy, you know that Oak is the heir of Elfhame. And he gets sent to the mortal world to basically grow up away. Oh my god, I already did that. Grow up away from Elfhame. Because Jude sends him away and thinks that this is for his own good. So he can rule the kingdom in a fair way. I just fucking dropped the lip balm I was gonna wear. Where the heck did it go? I think I'm going to wrap this up a bit later, though, because I don't feel that good now. So, bye. Okay, so hey, guys. So I wanted to come back and talk about the last three books that I read in April. So, like I said, I did read the Stolen Heir duology by Holly Black, and these two books concluded the Cruel Prince trilogy, and I really enjoyed both of these books quite a lot. The Stolen Heir was a 5-star read for me. I enjoyed this so much. It was incredibly well written. Holly Black just does fantastic storytelling. And I actually thought that this one was better, and I felt that this was more interesting than The Prisoner's Throne, but I still really enjoyed The Prisoner's Throne as well. So this one was a 5-star for me. This one was a 4.5. I still really, really liked it. And I did shed some tears in this one as well. But just because I shed some tears doesn't make that automatically a 5-star for me. Like, I shed some tears in The House Across the Lake, and I don't love that book as much as The Only One Left. So anyway, The Stolen Heir is about Ren and Oak. And Ren is a she was raised in the Court of Teeth, which is like the troll kingdom, but she is sent to live with her mortal parents that basically like abused her. And they always thought that she was not really worthy of their love. She thought that her parents would never accept her, and they didn't ever really see her as much of a monster, but like Ren is kind of monster-like. Like she has, monster-like teeth, and she's always saying throughout the whole book that, they have never seen the true monster that I can be. And Oak is, like I said, Jude's younger brother that is sent to live in the mortal world with Jude's sister, Vivian, I believe it's Vivian, and Heather, her girlfriend. And now Oak has to come and return back to Elfheim, not necessarily to claim Cardin's throne. I forget why they have to go back. But anyway, it's basically like a quest of Ren and Oak going back to Elfheim. And I just enjoyed the storytelling in this so much. I thought that I just had that adrenaline rush from beginning to end on how well written this book was. I just loved it. It was just so well written, and she's just an incredible storyteller. And like the action in this, and it's actually covering incredibly dark topics. And it's not like all happy-go-lucky. And like I said, like Ren goes through a lot of abuse when she's growing up. And again, I didn't feel like this was, listen to my sob story. You actually really felt for these characters in this book. And Oak has always felt like he is very similar to Cardin. And Oak's power is actually being very easily persuasive to get people to do what he persuades them to do. But Ren is actually a very powerful magical being, and she can actually control like anyone she chooses. So Oak ends up betraying her at some point in this book, and then it's just so good the way that Ren, she's trying to be good throughout this book, but then since so many people have betrayed her and betrayed her love and her trust in people, because even though her parents and her siblings didn't really love her in the way that they should have, she still loved them. And that's like such a common thing that happens with abused children, is that no matter what, like the kid is still going to have some love for that person, regardless of the abuse that they go through. And it's just so sad. But I feel like that's kind of like what she was kind of saying in this book. It's just so incredibly sad. But then at the end, Oak betrays her, and then she becomes the monster that everyone feared. And she was like, I'm not taking this shit anymore. Oak, you can rot in prison. I'm done. But Oak has always loved her since she was growing up. And he's still in love with her after she locks him up in prison. And that's how this one ends. And then the next one, basically, because it's called The Prisoner's Throne, it just leaves off exactly where, it picks up exactly where Stolen Heir left off, where Oak is locked up in the Court of Teeth for Ren, but she won't kill him. She just wants him to rot in prison. But eventually he escapes, and he's still, like I said, he's still in love with Ren. And basically, Jude wants to rescue Oak out of the prison, but she comes with like troops to basically attack the Court of Teeth to get him out of prison. But he actually escapes and he gets to Jude and Ren and everybody else, and he says, I propose a marriage betrothal to Ren. So basically it would form an alliance between the Court of Teeth and Elfhame. But I was so excited for there to be like some type of battle in this book, because throughout all of the Cruel Prince books and these two books, there hasn't been one battle. Not to say that the action wasn't great in these books, because they really are so well written. But that's why I was a tad bit disappointed in this book. I still loved it, but I was like so excited for Holly Black to write a battle scene, because I know it would be incredibly written. So I was like, yes, there's gonna be a battle. And then I was like, oh, there's no battle. So I was a little bit upset about that. But throughout the rest of the book, it was great. So well written. And basically, Oak spends the rest of the time trying to win over Ren's affections, and also is trying to prove to everyone that she's not as evil as she comes off. And also, the more that Ren uses her power, the more it actually eats away at her. So that's another key thing that goes on in this book, that she's actually like deteriorating magically. And it was just so good. And when Oak confesses his love to her, when shit goes down in like the last half of the book, was so, oh my god, I was crying. And I cried during this part, and then 2 seconds later, like somehow Holly Black just bounces you right back into the story. Because like some books, it's like I'm literally sobbing that I need like a minute before I can go back and read it again, because it's like emotionally draining. But somehow when she writes it, it's like you get bounced right back into the story. Like she doesn't lose the momentum at any point usually. And it was still really well written. I think it's right here. I can't find it. Basically, it's just really sweet the way that he says it. Maybe it is here. Oh, it's right here. Until I met you, I didn't understand. To feel loved, one has to feel known. And that outside of my family, I have never really loved, because I hadn't bothered to know the other person. But I know you, and you have come back to me, Ren, because no one gets us but us. You know why you're not a monster, but I might be. I know why throwing me in your dungeon meant there was still something between us. We are messes and we are messed up, and I don't want to go through this world without the other person, the one person I can't hide from and who can't hide from me. Come back. You want and you want and you want. Remember, we'll wake up and take what you want. And if you read this book, you'll totally understand why he says that at the you want and you want and you want part. It was just beautiful. So definitely 4.5. Such a good book. But I finally found my favorite book of the month. At the last 2 days of April, I finally read my favorite book this month, and that is Emily Henry's Beach Read. And I know that so many people rave about this book, and everybody's like so over hearing about fucking Beach Read at this point. But this book deserves all the hype, all the rave reviews, all of the 5 stars that it can possibly get, because this book is absolutely beautiful. And I just appreciated the flow of this book so much. I did not want to put this book down. Like, I felt the same way as I did about Stolen Air. I'm like, oh my god, what's going to happen next, what's going to happen next. And I haven't really felt too much like that about a romance book since I read Dead Romantics. This is probably tied with Dead Romantics as being like my favorite romance ever, besides Love and Other Words by Christina Loren, which is also a fantastic book. But this book got me emotionally. So definitely 5 out of 5 stars for me. Absolutely loved this book so much, and I can understand why this is her most popular book, why she shot to fame because of this book. It is just so beautiful. So it's about January Andrews and Augustus Everett, and January has to move to this beach house in, I forget exactly what state that they have to go to, and she has to move into the beach house that her father left behind because he had recently passed away. And her mother actually has had like 2 cancer scares in her life, and her father actually ends up passing away, and the mother ends up surviving cancer twice. Now, I won't go into too many of the details about the dad and the mom because there's a lot of stuff about the dad that contributes to the plot of this story, so I'm not going to spoil that. And Gus Everett is her, like, he lives across the street from her. And, like, one night he is playing Everybody Hurts, like, super loud. And there's, like, such a history as to why this party is thrown this night on the specific day that he throws this party. If you read the book, you will totally understand why they throw this party every year. It's fucking crazy, like, how good her connections are with the characters in these books. And I think that people compare Beach Read and Book Lovers so much, but I think Beach Read did everything that Book Lovers tried to do, just so much better. And a lot of people say that Book Lovers is like a Beach Read retelling, and it does have quite a lot of similarities, but like I felt like with Book Lovers, the way that they meet and the way that they live, you know, in the same state was a lot more, again, coincidental and suspend your belief. This, I just felt like it was more fate-like. And I just felt like it was way more realistic, the way that they end up being pushed together and the way that they are introduced to each other. So he's basically her high school rival, but she didn't know this until they actually, because she went over to tell him to turn the music down because she was trying to sleep. But she actually couldn't fully see him at night in the dark outside. So she didn't really see who he was until they were both invited to this book club meeting. Because, of course, like, when do people read romances without books being involved? But actually, they're both authors. She is a romance writer, and he writes, like, angsty, like, very heavy, like, cult-like kind of books that cover very heavy topics, like a suicide cult, like something like that. And they make this bet after they meet each other and after they're spending more time together that you couldn't write a romance novel with your eyes closed, and he thought the same thing about her writing his type of genre of books. So they actually make a bet that they're both going to write their own genres because she actually needs to write. It's just, there's so much to this plot. Like, you're like, oh, it's like a easy little read. No, this will emotionally ruin you. It was so beautifully written. So basically, she has to write a romance book for her agent and for the book deal that she has right now, but she's suffering like really bad writer's block. So she decides to write the genre that he writes, and she actually is inspired to write now, and she actually finishes this book. And they both have a bet basically saying that whoever sells or publishes their book first wins. And it's so cute. Again, there's so much to this story that, again, I just feel like you have to read this to understand why this book is so popular. The flow of this book, I felt like, was absolutely perfect. It covers some really hard topics as well, but it doesn't stray from the main plot of romance. And that's why this is a romance book. But this is also so much more than a romance book. And I felt like that when I read Dead Romantics, and I feel the same way as I did with this book. And I felt like Book Lovers was like way too much of a slow burn, that it's like, can they finally kiss? This, they kiss like not even 100 pages in. And then like the buildup happens from there on like, when are they going to see each other again? When are they going to spend more time together? But it's like, it's more so less about the like sex and romance and more so about their actual relationship on how they are together. And that's what makes this book so unique compared to other romance books. And I kind of felt the same way about Love and Other Words as well. But I just think it did everything so much better. I can't rave about this book enough. I loved this book so much. When I finished it last night, I was literally mind blown by how good this book actually is. So it's just incredible writing. I absolutely loved it. But the book club scene is like my favorite scene in the book. I just want to say this scene really quick because I thought it was hysterical. But there's so much more to the book and you have to read it. And I absolutely sobbed when she was reading these letters from her dead father. Absolutely sobbed. And if you guys have read this book, you will understand why you cry your eyes out when you're reading these letters in the book. Because Emily Henry is so, I want to stress this real quick too. Emily Henry is so amazing at making you feel like you are the character reading this book. Like, but you're not even reading a book anymore. You just feel like you're living their lives with them reading this book. And when I was reading those letters from her dad, I felt like I was her reading the letters from my dad. Like, it was just so realistic. And now I understand why people say that she writes her characters so real, because she really does. So the book club scene is where like this local coffee bookshop owner asks her to come to this book club meeting, and she just so happens to run into Gus walking into the bookshop. And there's also a very similar scene in Book Lovers, and it was cute, but it was definitely a repetitive scene from this book. But again, this book did it a little bit better. So she's like, yeah, come to our book club. And she invites him too. But she's like hiding behind the shelves because she knows who he is now. And she's like, oh my God, this is my high school rival. I need to hide. So they both get invited to go. And they think that they're both going to be talking about their books. Like, January thinks that she's going to talk to book club about her book, and then she sees Gus is already there, and she's like, wait, are they asking Gus she thinks that Gus is going to be talking about his book and that she's just here to hear about his book and not about hers. So I was like, oh shit, that's fucked up. And then when the bookshop owner actually says what they're going to talk about, they just wanted to invite both of the authors to hear about them talk about a book that they read in the book club. It was just so funny the way that they did it. I mean, the way that she writes this. It was funny. It was heartbreaking. It was emotional. It was so real. It was beautifully written. I absolutely freaking loved this. This is one of my favorite books I've ever read. And now I truly understand why people constantly reread this. I don't know if I could reread this book again. But now it's just really sparking my love affair with Emily Henry, that I just want to read all of her books. So, yeah, loved it so much. I need to shut up about it, though, because this video is long enough as I'm dropping it on the floor. Don't worry, it's carpet. It's fine. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. Follow me on my Instagram at CBW819 and check out my Poshmark at the same handle. And I think my May TBR might be up before this video, but I just wanted to say that I'm now reading Powerful by Lauren Roberts, which is 1.5 in the Powerless trilogy. And it is a powerless story taking place with Peyton's best friend, Adina. And if you read Powerless, you will totally understand why this story needed to be told. So I am reading that right now. I had to because it just came out last night at midnight. So I was like, that took priority over everything else that I'm going to read. And then right after I finish that, I am going to read Emily Henry's Funny Story because I also have that purchased on my Kindle ready to be read. So yeah, that's it. Bye. Keep reading. Bye. And let me know what your favorite book was this month. And have you read any of these books? Did you love them? Did you hate them? Let me know. Bye.